after I was looking at all of these comments about all the crap that your OB says, the shit OBs say, and like some of these were just absolutely horrifying what was being said. And recently I got a message in my inbox and someone said, look, like they told me I'm not allowed to have a vaginal birth after 3 cesareans. And they said that if I attempted it, that they would force me into the back of the ambulance and drag me to the hospital for a C-section. Well, first of all, that's illegal. But it really got me thinking about a lot of the things that OBs say, like care providers in general, these toxic care providers. It started to bring up some memories in a different area for me. So for those of you who don't know, like I started talking about this way back in the springtime when I was doing the first Empowered Birth workshop, back when they were still live. And I was mentioning how I was getting out of a very toxic marriage. A lot of people who have never been in a toxic relationship or don't understand like how abusive relationships really work, they're always like, I don't understand why you stayed. And there's a lot of parallels between that and a care provider who you know is not good for you, but you're staying with them anyway out of fear. So I really wanted to talk about that today. Because in my own life, I believe that the best way to learn things is to continue to invest in yourself and really get that knowledge. So I've started investing in a lot of relationship courses. I've been reading this as well to try to figure out, because I want to attract not just a partner. I'm not interested in just attracting just anybody. I want the man who's going to stand for my dreams. And the reason I left my relationship in the first place, instead of trying to fix it, was because I realized that it just was not going to work. Even if I managed to get him halfway where he needed to be, to at least be nice, he wasn't standing for my dreams. He had a lot of gaslighting. He's got anger issues like you wouldn't believe. It's insane. I do not recommend getting into a relationship with a narcissistic partner. It's just not fun. Anyway, but I didn't see that. Just like we don't see what happens with our OBs. We don't see it right away. And a lot of it has to do with the culture that we've grown up in. So these relationship courses that I've been going through has been helping me to unlearn a lot of things that the patriarchy has basically drilled into our heads, such as the fact that you need to be worthy of your partner. Ladies, that's not how it actually works. True love is supposed to be standing for somebody's, not their potential, but who they are as a person. And all you really need to do is just be yourself. And I mean, be your higher self, not just, this is who I am. And I am like this grouchy person who kicks things across the room and you have to love me exactly as I am. That's not what I'm talking about here, because that is a lot of what you pick up from Twilight and 50 Shades of Grey and even Beauty and the Beast, is that you have this grouchy person, but because they love you, everything's supposed to be okay? No. So a lot of what we've been learning in relationships is also in our culture when it comes to birth, is that we're thinking we have to please our OBs. We have to please our partners. We have to do as they say because they know better. And no. The best way to find your one true love, or to find your perfect care provider, is to first focus not on their expectations, but what you want. So you go through it and you think exactly what you're looking for. And it's not the perfect man list where everything's like, he's got to have a good job, or he's got to have, if you're looking for an OB, they have to be a certain C-section rate, or they need to have X credentials, or they need to have been practicing for X number of years. No, you really want the qualities, and you want to notice how you really feel around that person, and not just when you're pleasing them, but also when you're displeasing them. So one thing I tell my clients early on when they're finding a care provider is to say, hey, pick which test you don't want to do, and tell your care provider right up front that you don't want to do that test, and then watch their reaction. Because everybody is on their best behavior when you're pleasing them. So what I found in my learning about relationships is that, first of all, when you're on a date with a guy and you're thinking, I really, really hope he likes me. He's so perfect. He's so good looking. Oh, he's so good on paper. I really, really hope he picks me. You're going about it the wrong way. And the kind of energy that really creates, not that it's your fault, because again, this is what we're taught, that energy attracts narcissistic partners. And it took me a long time to realize that what I'd done is I basically attracted that I hope he likes me. And what happened is that, yeah, this ex-husband of mine, he did like me because I was pleasing him, because I put him up on a pedestal. And so he did the same. He love bombed me and he told me how good I was and so amazing and that I could do anything I wanted. But then slowly but surely, he started to control things. And your OB is very much the same. In the beginning, it seems great. They're a really nice person. They have great bedside manner. You kind of think, I could talk to this person. I feel safe with them. But then they start to say, okay, well, we need to do this test. And they don't tell you why. And they don't really give you the option of refusing that test. They don't even tell you that that's an option to refuse that test. And if you happen to know enough and you say, you know, I really don't want to do that, they might dismiss it and go, well, you know, I mean, it's a standard test and you can decline it if you want, but I don't understand why you would do that, because you want to do what's best for your baby, don't you? And they're gaslighting you. And if you don't recognize that they're gaslighting you in that moment, then you go into it and you're like, well, I mean, they're looking out for my best interest. So yeah, maybe I'll do this test. But you didn't really want it in the first place. And then they say after that, well, you know, there were some results that came back and I'm a little concerned. I mean, there's no real problem yet, but we're going to probably think about inducing you just because you're older, or just because you are a certain weight, or just because it's just standard of care around here that we don't let anybody go past this amount of days past their due date. And again, that's another red flag, but you might say, well, you know, everybody does this, so it probably seems reasonable, so I'm going to go with that. But then you start to think a little bit for yourself. You read something in a book, and then they say, well, you know, that book's wrong, and you really shouldn't be listening to any of that stuff, because I know more. I went to school for this, and that article is like just one person's opinion, Dr. Google, and they're kind of dismissing your opinions, and you're like, well, maybe they're right. Maybe I need to just listen to them. And you know what? All of these things that I'm telling you about OBs and how they can act is so much like how I got into that toxic relationship in the first place, because it was the same thing. I would read something about a relationship and he would say, well, you know, you really need to stop getting your head in those books. No, I'm not abusive. No, I'm just mad. And it's okay for me to be mad. And you can't really tell me that you didn't provoke me. And yeah, I kicked that across the room, but you made me mad. Like, that was his logic. And it took me a long time to finally realize it doesn't matter. You're invalidating my feelings, and I'm actually in charge here of my feelings, not you. So the same thing with your OB. If your OB is telling you that your feelings about your pregnancy or about your birth or anything that you're experiencing, and they're dismissing them, that is a huge red flag. So what do we do instead? what you want to do in dating to find the right person who's not going to gaslight you, who's not going to invalidate your feelings, who's going to stand for your dreams, who's actually going to support you, who is not going to turn around one day and be like this abusive person. And you're like, how the hell did I get here at this point? To do that, you need to have your mindset. You need to have the right mindset. And I talk about this a lot with the 5 pillars of empowerment, is that right mindset is 90% of the game. 90% of the game is played above the shoulders. And once you understand that, once you embody that, then you can't attract those kinds of people anymore. They're actually repelled by you. And I've actually started testing this because for a while my ex was begging me back. But once I really stood in my power of I can have anyone I want, and I am okay even single by myself, and I'm looking to see how you're going to benefit my life, and looking at from that mindset, he's not attracted to me anymore. Thank God, because that was exhausting. But the same thing with your care provider is when you're going into those appointments and you're like, I just need to find a care provider because if I don't find one by a certain number of weeks, then I won't have any prenatal care. And if I don't have any prenatal care, then I can't go to the hospital and I can't birth my baby. And there's all this fear and you feel rushed to find a care provider. So you just latch on to the first one you want. That's like getting into a relationship when you're just like, I just need to find a guy. I just need to find a guy because I have a timeline and I need to follow that timeline. And I need to get pregnant by this time. So I need to find a guy, and just anyone will do at this point. Anyone who matches my description on my piece of paper. But you're going about it all wrong. And the problem is that that's what we've been taught, is to have our perfect man list. And it's all these superficial qualities, kind of like a birth plan. And you're like, I just want a care provider who's going to give me a vaginal birth. Or I just want a care provider who's going to let me have a VBAC. Well, they might say, yeah, we do VBAC here. But you've just missed a lot of the undercurrent, you've got the tip of the iceberg here. There's a whole big other part. How do they do VBAC? Because if they do VBAC by saying you need to have the epidural, and we need to hook you up to the IV, and we need to hook you up to the electronic fetal monitor, and you need to have your baby by X number of days before your due date, or we schedule a C-section, and you need to be showing signs of labor progress, and you need to dilate 1 centimeter per hour, and if you don't have your baby by 39 weeks, then we're not going to induce you. We're just going to give you a C-section. And if you have a baby over this weight, then you can't have a VBAC. And if you come to the hospital, you need to do so at the beginning of labor. Don't wait till the end. Like all of these stupid restrictions, they don't do VBAC. I'm going to tell you that right now. They don't do VBAC. What they do is we're going to put you through our machine. And if you have a vaginal birth, well, good. That's luck. But most likely, they're going to push you into a C-section because they don't understand physiological birth. Anytime they are trying to control your labor or control how long your pregnancy lasts or control how big your baby is or control whether or not you have signs of labor progress, and they keep trying to push things along, they don't do VBAC. And I'm going to go even further, and I'm going to say they don't do physiological birth. They don't do vaginal birth. What they do is managed birth. And you don't want that. Because if you're trying to step into your power and have an empowered birth, you want to be the one to decide whether or not an intervention is needed, not them. And the same thing, like when we go back to that metaphor of the date. So the date and the interview with your care provider are basically the same thing. And I just want to say that something was brought to my attention earlier today, that some people are not too clear on what I mean by interviewing your care provider. This is not meaning that you have to set up a separate interview just to talk to them. I mean, you can, but oftentimes when you're booking with someone, the idea is that you're going to a first appointment. And I'm going to be talking another time about what you want to do at that first appointment. But the idea is that you use that first appointment to figure out if you're going to like this care provider. So maybe they say, we want you to get on the scale. And you're not comfortable with that. You can say, actually, I'm not comfortable with having my weight taken into consideration. I'd rather monitor my own weight at home. And I'll let you know if I see any issues in the future in terms of weight gain. But I don't really see the need for that. You may want to do that, especially if you were fat shamed in the past or if you were skinny shamed, because there is another side of the coin. I got skinny shamed for being quite small. So maybe they also say, oh, well, we do these blood tests. And you can say, no, thank you. I don't really want that. Or maybe the standard for them is that they do a vaginal exam on the first appointment. Some care providers do this and some don't. But the thing is that there's so much variance and nuance. And you can say, actually, I'm not comfortable with that and I don't see any need, so I'm declining. And then you want to watch to see what they say. Because once you put yourself in that position as a decision maker, you can watch them more carefully. See, if I had actually chosen in the beginning to disagree with my then boyfriend, now ex-husband, if I had taken the time to challenge him and see whether or not I hope he likes me, but is he going to fit in my long-term plans? Of course, I didn't have any long-term plans at that point, and I also had no idea what I wanted in a partner. I was 23. My brain hadn't fully developed yet. I wasn't 25 yet. I'd had no concept of a relationship. So same thing like when you go in to see an OB and you have no concept of what is actually on offer, you really just think, oh, this is the way it is all the time. So I just have to go with it. So I thought, this is what a good guy looks like. And because he's taking the time to pull the chair out for me, he helped, he opened the door for me. He was very considerate. Well, of course he was on his best behavior. And your OB on the first appointment is going to try to get you in because they want to keep you as a client. So of course they're going to say, yeah, we do VBAC, but they could be bait and switching you because they're like, well, we do this, but we have restrictions on it. And we're not going to tell you, we're just going to slowly undermine your confidence until you do what we want. So how do you combat that? Well, first you need to know exactly what you want going in. So this is why I created my birth plan course. In the meantime, here's what you really want to do is you want to think about your ideal birth and you want to think, this is what I want. This is the kind of support I want. And once you're focusing on what you do want, not what you don't want, it's going to be easier for you to start to see those red flags come up. So when you go to your interview with your care provider or your first appointment, whatever you want to call it, you're really going in with the mindset of, I can have any care provider I want. I don't actually need a care provider. I'm just choosing to hire one because I can birth my baby with or without their help because my body works and I understand how my body works. And if I have any complications come up that I feel are necessary to have some help around, if I'm trusting my intuition and I'm like, something's not right, I know that I can get help because legally the medical system is obligated to help you. They are obligated to serve you. When they say we're going to drop you as a patient because you're not doing X test, they are actually doing something illegal because that's considered medical coercion. That's threatening your ability to get help based on what they want. And you have the right to informed consent and refusal. So when you're at that first interview, you're not thinking, I hope this OB will work out and that they'll hire me. No, you're going in thinking, this is what I want. Is this service going to work for me? How do I feel talking to this person? Sure, they might be a really nice person, but when I say that I don't want something, what feelings are coming up for me right now? Do I feel like I have to convince them and argue with them to get what I want? Because I see this so often where moms will be like, I showed my care provider my birth plan and they say they don't support that. How do I convince them? Well, first of all, you don't. You don't convince them. They're either on your team or they're not. And if they're not, then they're not right for you. That's the same thing as saying, how do I convince this guy to treat me better? Trust me, it doesn't work. I turned every single stone upside down trying to get my ex to treat me better. I tried to say, hey, you know what you're doing is abusive. I said, hey, you know, I'd feel safer if you said it this way. Hey, you know, this really hurt me. And his thing is always, well, that's a you problem, not a me problem. And other people don't seem to worry so much about it. And you're wrong for those feelings. And he took it as an attack. No matter which way I tried to tell him, it was an attack. Well, sometimes, I'm sorry to say this, but 1/3 of doctors out there are narcissists. It attracts that profession. Why? Because what do we do with doctors? We put the hero label on them. Narcissists are incredibly attracted to being the hero. So there's certain OBs out there who, no matter what you tell them, even that you're saying, look, I've had this before. It's not a kidney blockage. I don't need an ultrasound. I just need a shot of morphine so that my muscles relax and I can go to sleep, and I'll see my chiropractor in the morning. And they keep you waiting for 3 hours because they are convinced you have a kidney blockage just because you're dehydrated. And you can say to them, well, no, because of course I'm dehydrated. I can't keep anything down right now because the pain is so severe and my baby keeps moving and rubbing against that spot on my muscle and it's painful and I just need some morphine to relax so I can eat again. And this arrogant OB schedules an ultrasound anyway, finally giving you the morphine 3 hours after you've requested it. True story. Another one, of course, is the OBs that are like, well, you know, my recommendation is that you go with what I want you to do. And we don't do that here. We don't support breech birth. Well, first of all, birth is birth. And your body is going to do it anyway. I've seen unassisted breech births. I've watched them. I've watched mothers push their babies out. The rule about physiological breech birth is hands off the breech. So you would be upright on all fours and your care provider would just have to stand back and not do anything. But because they have the hero complex and because they don't actually believe that you have the ability to birth your baby, they try to control it. And the same thing with an abusive partner, especially a narcissist, is that they have this idea that their way is better, their way is the only way, and no matter what you say, you're just arguing with them and you don't know what you're talking about and you're crazy. So again, you want to go into that mindset of, why do I need you? Convince me that I need you. Convince me that you're the right one for me. Not in an arrogant way, not in a way in which you're being combative, but just going in curious and just watching. And instead of feeling like I have to do exactly as the doctor says, you already have your plan. You've already created it. So the same thing, of course, with dating is that I'm now going in thinking, who is best going to facilitate my dreams? And so I've got a lot of responses, a lot of people coming through Tinder. They don't all make the cut, but then I have the messages and I just see, it's like, is this one going to be any different? Like, is he going to impress me? And most of the time, no, they don't impress me. And that's okay. I'm not thinking I'm never going to find anybody. I know they're out there. So even if you've gone through care provider after care provider and you're like, I can't find anybody that I like, that supports me, I might as well just give up on my dreams. No, you don't have to give up on your dreams. Because what you can do instead is be like, okay, what realistically do I need to have done? Well, I want to have this specific test. Well, how are there other ways that I can get this test ordered so that I get what I want, but I don't have to deal with the abuse of a care provider? Because there are ways to get tests ordered. Another one, of course, is thinking in the terms of, I can birth my baby on the side of the road. I could birth my baby at home, unassisted. If it really came down to it, if there was no way of getting to that hospital, I guarantee that you would eventually go into labor and you would birth your baby. Because that's what your body is designed to do. That baby is not going to stay up there just because there's no OB to catch them. That baby is coming out. Just like the idea of eventually someone out there is going to find you, as long as you love yourself. So I'm going to invite you to love yourself, love your body, trust your body, love your baby, and be like, I have everything that I need right now to birth. And if you need help with that, one of the books that I have been reading inside of the Take Charge of Birth program class is called Reclaiming Childbirth as a Rite of Passage. And in it, Rachel Reed talks about how our bodies are just designed to birth. And she really goes into a lot of detail about this. And we were talking about early labor and the actual purpose of early labor being that it signals that you need to get into your safe place with your safe environment. And when you're not in your safe place with your safe environment, then you start to feel stress, your mindset goes backwards, you can't focus, and that's when problems happen, where your labor will stall. Because honestly, if you're told your OB is not there and you're still early in your labor, you just might slow down your progress because you're no longer feeling safe. Same for midwives. There was one midwife when I was in labor with Hunter, and I went to the hospital the day before when I started to feel the contractions, and I knew that I was establishing some progress. My contractions were about 4 minutes apart, so I thought I would go in. But upon arriving, I found out that the midwife that they had on call was not one of the ones that I'd built up a relationship with. So I had no idea who this woman was, and I felt very, very nervous. And it didn't help that I was also in the hospital. So what happened is that I didn't get up to 4 centimeters. I might have been 4 centimeters, but then your cervix is not a crystal ball and it can close up again. So then my labor kind of paused a bit. Didn't completely stop, but it definitely slowed down. And I went home and I went to bed. And I was laboring strong all through the night, and I was laboring strong in the morning. And then I get to the hospital and I'm 4 centimeters again. That doesn't mean that I was always 4 centimeters. I could have been 6, but then the stress of traveling in the hospital freaked me out. So the same thing is if you're going into these OB appointments and you're not feeling safe, then that can also lead to you not being able to birth at the prescribed timeline. Now, of course, you might be a 42-week mama, but if you're thinking, I'm having a lot of prodromal labor and every time I go to this care provider and try to get a membrane sweep to get things going, it's just not working. Well, the reason for that is you're stressing yourself out. And the idea of early labor and prodromal labor is to get you into that safe space so you can rest, so you can let go, and so you can relax. All right, so that's my thoughts on OBs and toxic relationships. I'll probably have a lot more to talk on this topic. If you have any questions or comments, you're free to leave them inside the chat, or you can send me a message through my inbox, and I'm always happy to take comments and suggestions of what you'd like to learn. And I will see you next week. All right, I'll talk to you later.